All right, it is a transitional lesson for us. We're going from talking about the executive branch to talking about the judicial branch of our government. This is the Supreme Court building. It's right across the road from the Capitol building in the United States. It's where the Supreme Court sits. They meet on the first Monday in October to start to hear arguments in cases. So let's look at the judicial branch and the Supreme Court. Specifically, this is Article 3 of the Constitution. So in this overview, we're going to take you through the different parts. The judicial branch of our government interprets the laws, right? We've got a legislative branch that makes the laws. We have a president whose job as head of the executive branch is to enforce the laws. And then we have the judicial branch that interprets those laws, especially as they concern the Constitution, the written form of government here in the United States. And so I've got a lot of great videos for you that are on the playlist. So if you're watching this virtually, I encourage you after you watch this one to head over to my YouTube channel and check out those items. Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution says the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior, and shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. It's a really fancy way of saying we're going to have a Supreme Court. You'll notice that Article 3 is the least well-defined of our Constitution, right? Article 1 is really does a nice job of spelling out what the legislative branch is going to do. Article 2 gets a little shorter because, again, the founding fathers were worried about somebody grabbing too much power and becoming a king. And then Article 3 is even less, just because court systems in England were notoriously corrupt at the time the Constitution is being written. And so, again, this is something that intimidated the founding fathers. They knew they wanted a Supreme Court, but if you'll notice, they reserved the power for Congress to establish courts that go on underneath, right? So let's kind of figure out what this is going to look like. The judges holding their office during good behavior basically means these are lifetime appointments. So these people are not going to have to be elected. And that's an important distinction simply because sometimes you may have to make a decision that's not very popular. And so you don't want them worrying about the political ramifications, right? Having to win an election or keep a job to do that. Now, usually state judges and county judges are elected and do have to run for office, but federal judges don't. The modern federal court system, we have 3 levels of court system. We have trial courts that are called district courts that are spread out around the country. So if you violate federal law, you can be brought up on charges in federal court. We have an appeals court, which is called the circuit court. So you hear about different circuits. The D.C. Circuit is one where a lot of Supreme Court justices come from, and then ultimately the Supreme Court. So even though there are only 9 justices on the Supreme Court, there are over 800 federal judges that work for the United States government today. So there are an awful lot of these courts that are spread around the country. Got a map here for you to show you where the district courts are in the United States. So the closest one to us, there's one in Chicago and there's one in Cincinnati that are closest to us. So, and you can see from the color coding on the map what areas of the country those courts cover. So if you violated some kind of federal law in Indiana, you would go to the 7th Circuit Court up there in Chicago. So that'll give you an idea of where those are. Circuit writing was actually something that early Supreme Court justices had to do. It's one of the reasons that a lot of times those people didn't stay in the job very long, is because even though you were meeting in Washington, D.C., and deciding things for a while, you also had to ride circuit, which meant you had to hop on a horse or in a wagon or carriage and ride around to local courts to help decide things when you weren't doing that. So very physically arduous. And would have been difficult journeys for some of these folks. Now that of course changed over time, but in the early days of the Supreme Court, that was something that those folks had to do. The Supreme Court justices, we have 9 Supreme Court justices today. Told you that gets established in 1869. When we look at the history of the Supreme Court, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Most justices are lawyers, judges, or law professors before they become Supreme Court justices, but you don't have to be. Really, the only requirement is you're appointed by the President of the United States and you're confirmed by the Senate. So the President, usually when they become President, has a short list of people that they want to see or would like to see on the Supreme Court, and then if a vacancy comes up, they will appoint someone. For the president, this can be legacy setting because the people they appoint to the Supreme Court are going to be there much longer, probably, than the president will be in office. And so it's a way of kind of securing a legacy across generations. Our Chief Justice today is this fella. His name is John Roberts, and he was appointed by President George W. Bush as Supreme Court Chief Justice. So he's been there, and we've had President Obama, President Trump, and now getting ready to have President Biden. So President Bush appoints him, but this guy's been on the court for the administration, been the Chief Justice for the next at least 3 administrations, and he's not an old guy. He'll be there for probably at least a couple of more administrations making rulings at the Supreme Court. So it is something that can greatly determine presidential legacy. Judicial independence, Alexander Hamilton said, is the best expedient which can be devised in any government to secure a steady, upright, and impartial administration of the laws. This is taken from one of the Federalist Papers, and it was his argument for why there needed to be a third branch of our government, the judicial branch. He said they need independence. And we talked, if you remember, way back in the beginning about these checks and balances that our branches of government have on each other. And really, for the judicial branch, it's check on both the Congress and the executive is its ability to declare laws or executive orders unconstitutional. And so these guys are the final arbitrators of what the Constitution means and how it's going to affect the country. So what kind of things could land you in front of the Supreme Court, right? This is a federal court, and so there are state laws that can get here, but it's much more likely they're going to deal with federal laws. So I put some cool federal laws here. Mail fraud is one that will get you there. Hijacking, kidnapping, carjacking, those sorts of things. Lynching, bank robbery, child pornography, credit card fraud, identity theft, racketeering, which is basically being a mobster, art theft, destroying public mailboxes, or attempting to assassinate the president of the vice president of the United States. Those are just a couple of examples of crimes that would be federal crimes. And I've got another cool little video there that will show you some different levels of federal crime. So please head over to the playlist, take a look at some of these videos that are going to help you understand a little bit more about our court system, how it works, and then eventually the Supreme Court.